Alrighty, welcome back everyone. It is LaughNgamez here. I'm back with another Starcraft 2 1 vs 1 replay cast. I feel like it's been too long since I did one of these, and I definitely do miss them. So, spawning up in the top left-hand side of the map, it is JimRising, playing for Predator Esports. He is the Mexican Zerg player, consistently streaming, consistently laddering at a very high level. And then his opponent spawning down the bottom right-hand side of the map. It's Scarlett, playing for Team Newbie. Those of you familiar with Scarlett, she is normally a Zerg player from Canada, but this time she's off racing as Protoss. I've actually cast Scarlett versus JimRising before on my channel, and I thought, all right, it's always fun to watch someone off race, and then also rematches are great. So yeah, this should be a fantastic match between these two, I think. Now, well, we've got Scarlett moving out with her probe, being a bit of a nuisance early on, trying to block JimRising's hatchery, but he does get that up. Protoss can only block so much. So that hatchery on the way up, and then Scarlett just getting up her gateway, and everything standard. I'm curious to see how she's going to play. It really is the question of how is the off-racing player going to play. Usually, you dip into the dirty strategies a little bit if you are off-racing. I think pretty much anyone who off-races, myself included, is guilty of that. You say, whenever you lose to it or you're on the receiving end, you say, hey, you know what? I wanna do that to someone else. And so now Scarlett, she is playing Protoss. She's harassing JimRising with her probe a little bit. You send it over to Scout, you may as well. Although JimRising, we're gonna try and keep that drone alive. Scarlett's doing a good job harassing it. Oh my god, there's no way she gets the drone, right? Yeah, no, she doesn't. Lings are going to be on the way in just a second here, so that drone shouldn't have to hang on for too much longer. But look at that. She's just consistently microing that probe, being a nuisance. Meanwhile, everything else is going on in the background. Just Cybercore up, Nexus on the way. Both players mining their gas. JimRising yet to start his speed. Starts his queen first. But now speed on the way. And as a result, since there's a few links out, but oh my god, this probe is relentless. Now going after a drone at the natural. Poor JimRising. Okay, now the lings are out, so this probe should be done, though. This probe will pay for the sins of Scarlett. Now, Stargate is on the way for Scarlett. I believe last game that I cast of her off racing as Protoss, I believe she went for a fair few oracles. And maybe even some Void Rays, some Stargate play, but we'll see how this game's gonna go. Adept's moving in for Scarlett, starting things off, so gonna be pretty standard as far as this goes, but there's only 2 lings here to shoo this Adept away. Queen does pop out, so that Adept should be forced back, but gets the 2 lings, gonna shade on in, possibly commit to the main base, we'll see. She does indeed cancel that shade there now. That Stargate's gonna finish up now, so we'll see what the tech of choice is, and it's an Oracle coming out for Scarlett. JimRising, on the other hand, just macroing up. We'll see exactly how he's going to play it, but now 2 Adepts are going to be diving into his main base. Good reaction by JimRising. A few lings are dying to this, but that's really their duty. But look at this. Scarlett does commit to the shade in the main base. So far, picking off a few units here and there. I believe she got 1 drone. Actually, 2 drones have died so far to these Adepts. Queen will pick off 1 of them. Other Adept will shade on out. So in the end, we see 2 drones die early on. 8 lings for an Adept and a probe. Not terrible. Nothing too significant, honestly, though. The real question is how much damage is this Oracle moving across the map? Ling will scout this Oracle. I think JimRising may just have caught a glance of that, but Oracle's going to fly on over that 3rd base. It hasn't quite finished yet. Queens are getting into position for JimRising. Oracle flies on in, focuses down 2 drones, and gets on out. Nicely done. That really is the given for the Protoss player, usually, if there's just queens in there to defend no spores or anything like that. Queen gets an extra shot off on that Oracle, but it's already started regenerating shields, and we are seeing an extra Stargate go up for Scarlett, so she's going to be playing something to do with air units. Now, a Phoenix is on the way. Another one's queued up behind this, so it looks like it'll be that Oracle into Mass Phoenix. You try and catch the Zerg player off guard with a lot of Phoenix, because, of course, the first Phoenix denies the Scout, and then the second one, all the consecutive Phoenix after are a bit of a surprise for the Zerg player. The Zerg player has to be on their toes wondering, what is this Protoss player going to be going for? And the Stargate definitely, the double Stargate definitely is a build which is very good at sort of keeping Zerg in the dark. The Phoenix just shuts it down. And then the Zerg player is always wondering, always paranoid and scared, but JimRising coming in with his Lings here, sees the third base is on the way, so he at least knows it's no crazy 2-base all-in. He starts up a lot more drones, and he's getting +1 melee attack while this is going on. Now, the Lings, they're going to be returning on home. He doesn't have much confirmation about what's out there. I imagine he's just seen the 2 gateways at the front. Yeah, that is the case, but eventually there will be a fair few Phoenix that fly on in. Scarlett's still producing these. Looks like she's moving out with 4 for now, and that's a pretty healthy number, but JimRising, I mean, he's already got Spore Crawlers up for the Oracles. He sees the Phoenix, so he's going to start up another Spore Crawler, position his queens appropriately. Now this one queen, I said, okay, sort of jinxed myself there. Those queens pulled back a little bit, but apparently that one not far enough. This other queen working away on these Phoenix. Phoenix are very tanky units. A Transfuse goes down, but she does end up falling, so looks like one of those does die. Now, JimRising, looks like he's putting on a bit of counter pressure. He's got this +1 Ling attack, so he's going to try and get on in here, get something done. But the Zealot, and then, of course, the Oracle, the main component for the Zerg to really shut this down. A few Adepts run on in for Scarlett, trying to get something done. 7, 8 drones have died this game. Phoenix getting a little bit of something here and there. JimRising trying to keep that number up. He's producing more and more constantly. And now he's moving out with these Lings, which will be +1 just momentarily. And we'll see if they're actually able to get something done. They deal a lot of damage very quickly, but of course the Oracle will want to kill him. But these Lings getting on in here now. Looks like they're going to surround the Zealot, force that Oracle to activate its Pulsar Beam. But there is a lot of energy on that Oracle for now, and actually the Phoenix coming on in for Scarlett. But they actually do turn around there, so not diving onto those queens, not lifting them up, but Scarlett has a very healthy Phoenix count for now, but she did delay all of her other attack. JimRising, he's already going to have up a Hydralisk then, getting up a Baneling Nest, getting into his +2, whereas Scarlett, she's just getting up her Robos, she's getting up a Forge and Twilight now, but going for the Phoenix build does delay things a little bit. Scarlett's got 10 drones, which is sort of an acceptable amount of damage. You'd like to get a bit more if you're the Phoenix player. You always want to be trying to get value with them, and that's why she's sharking around, but there is only so much value you can get with these Phoenix past a certain point. However, Scarlett does find these 3 drones, picks up another queen, which is always a nice move. Gonna catch an Overlord. It's the little things here and there that you want to continuously be trying to use these Phoenix to do. Looks like these queens will shoo those Phoenix away, though. A few of them are bruised, but still keeping them alive. They can maybe look for something else later. And look at this, they're actually going to commit right on top of these queens, but is there a Transfuse? There is not, so unfortunately for that queen, it does go down, but a Phoenix goes down as a retribution there. And now we're seeing the standard Protoss follow-up to this build coming out of Scarlett. She's actually doing a very standard build, nothing too cheeky or anything like that this game. Double Immortal on the way, Charge on the way, +1. Templar Archives. This is the standard Protoss follow-up to the double Phoenix Stargate. And then JimRising just tacking up normally. Kind of forced into Hydras for the Phoenix, but Zerg players like their Hydras, so might have ended up there anyway. But JimRising just going to start building up that number. Make sure that the Phoenix don't have free reign anymore. Then, of course, can maybe try and catch him, but nothing too significant just yet. Phoenix going to lift up a Ling or two. Just being... just looking for anything there now. Double Immortal production continuing on. Psystorm on the way for Scarlett. And Psystorm, I think, I'm going to be honest with you guys, it's probably the most enjoyable thing to off-race with. And I think a lot of players would also agree, but that's actually a nice catch for Scarlett, getting 3 Phoenix. But Psystorm, a very, very powerful spell. And Scarlett committing to a fair few of those High Templar there for the Storms. Got up 5 already, building up a lot of energy. And of course, High Templar is very good in this situation. But oh, look at this. Bit of miscontrol there. Scarlett now lost most of her Phoenix to these Hydras. And look at this, JimRising also counterattacking, but Scarlett defends her 4th base. JimRising seeing the 4th base is nice for him, but this is a pretty nicely timed 4th base for Scarlett. She's already getting up all of her extra tech, Immortals, even a Fleet Beacon on the way, maybe for a Mothership. But the 4th base for JimRising is just getting up now, so she does have a nice timing on that base. She's getting up a Warp Prism so she can begin her harassment. JimRising is looking for something, and we'll actually find these Phoenix, these poor Phoenix. That's the last of them. They are all gone down now, so they really turn off as those Hydras pop out. They really diminish. Now, 4th base is up for Scarlett. She's keeping that defended. Getting up a cannon, maybe a shield battery or 2 would be nice to support the cannon, really give you a bit of peace of mind of your Scarlett. But for now, she's keeping both of her bases safe, High Templars at each possible attack location. So she's pretty fine from JimRising just committing on with something like a ton of Hydras, a ton of Lings or Banelings. But JimRising this game actually committing to Lurkers. He's getting his 1-1 on the way now, so he'll actually be pretty much equal on upgrades when that finishes up. Gonna have the +2 melee for the Banelings, which is always nice, but really just hammering on these Hydras. JimRising currently up to 30 Hydras, another 11 on the way, and then producing Lurkers. And Lurkers are fantastic at zoning out Protoss players. As, of course, they're a defensive unit, but the thing is they're a very mobile defensive unit, so they can seize positions, and this is why Protoss has to be very careful. That said, sometimes Protoss will just take fantastic engagements, and it'll look like those Lurkers will look like nothing. A nice counterattack from Scarlett, by the way, getting into the main base with these Zealots, canceling the 5th base of JimRising. A lot of Zealots are out on the map for Scarlett right now, and she's actually pushing at the front, just teasing JimRising a little bit, just saying, hey, I'm here as well, so you got to keep an eye on that. So JimRising really being pulled apart right now. 5th base actually gets killed by those Zealots, quickly swiping that off. So JimRising, his base being denied even longer is not a nice thing for the Zerg player. The more bases, the merrier. And now a mothership's on the way for Scarlett. +3 ship weapons, or +3 ground weapons, pardon me, and just continued Immortal production, currently up to 11. And I'm in the boat. Immortals, you can never have enough of them. Banelings are chasing these Zealots. It's something like the Legacy of the Void campaign there, cinematic, but here we see Scarlett. She's moving on in right now. She's got this army. It's a little bit split up. It's not too formidable, this force right here. I mean, of course, this many Zealots is always formidable, but without a little bit more support, it's a little bit flimsy, so maybe some Zealots warping in here would be good to see, but for now, High Templar, Immortals, Archons moving out on the map. Scarlett very confident with this. The Zealots have continuously denied this 5th base, and she realizes she's really pulling JimRising apart, so she's looking for this opportunity. Now, Lurkers are getting set up on this ramp, so she's going to have to be very careful if she pushes up into that and she decides against it. The Oracle with the Revelation is very important. Really helps engaging those Lurkers so you don't have to worry about your Observer being sniped off. But now we're seeing JimRising actually coming in for an attack right now. Has a beautiful concave. Scarlett backed herself into a corner. Psystorm's going down. She may just want to try and recall here or something, but she's really backed into a corner right now. Psystorm's going down. JimRising with a beautiful concave. Tries to pull back versus the Psystorms. Most of them are gone right now, and Immortals are good, but versus just Hydras in a straight-up fight, they definitely lose. So a fantastic engagement for JimRising there on the main front. However, Scarlett, relentless with these Zealot counterattacks. There's been so many Zealots that have run into the base of JimRising, so getting some nice counter damage done, and you can sure bet that 5th base is canceled once again. Meanwhile, Scarlett getting up her own 5th base. I shouldn't say getting up, it's already up. It's not mining yet, but she has the option, so 5 bases for a Protoss, keeping the Zerg player on 4. JimRising did a good job clearing the army of Scarlett, so these Zealots that have bought her time are very important. This Warp Prism also still hanging around. JimRising is getting up a Hive and a Spire, so Vipers are something that I definitely like to see for this. Those Abducts are very, very great. They don't have to worry about High Templar as much as they used to, so they're not as sort of vulnerable, which is always nice. But look at this, one Zealot moving in. JimRising's finally saying, okay, I'm not going to get up that base, or this base has been taken down so many times, so I'm going to double expand, which is actually his choice. I love it when Zerg players double expand, because so often we've seen JimRising lose this base up here. If he had started like one down to the south, maybe it would have gotten up. Of course, that's a big hypothetical, but if you can manage it, always go for the double expand. Warp Prism gets picked off as well, which is very important. Hydra's moved down, saved the space from that one Zealot. 52 Zealots have died this game, most of them in run-bys, I think. Now Scarlett, she's teching up. Likes to get up to these mass carriers. The mothership rebuilt. JimRising's looking to push on in, but now the fact that there's carriers out, you do have to really respect these. As the Zerg player retreating now. Carriers themselves aren't that good with Psystorm support. They're very good now. JimRising, he's getting into a lot of Corruptors here. Corruptors pretty decent versus carriers. It really does depend on the Psystorms and how many of those go down, but Scarlett really producing a lot of carriers, and they build pretty darn quick these days, guys. Now, here we see JimRising. He's got up his 5th base, got up his 6th base. I think we need to see some static defense, maybe like an Evo wall or something to keep this safe from Zealot run-bys, because here comes one. JimRising, he sees it, but he's also occupied with this army on his front door, and it's not too formidable of an army, but as a lot of these carriers are still building or just rallying up, but once they're there, it's going to be very, very worrying. And here comes in the Zealots. They're looking for some drones at this base. That poor queen's got to run. The drone's running with her. Now, some Hydras are moving into position, so this will be cleaned up. But Scarlett may seize the moment here. Lurkers are in position. There's a Spore Crawler as well to help keep vision on these units. But Scarlett's got a very scary force right now. Both players are relatively equal on supply. Corruptors actually move on in. They snipe off one carrier, looking for another, focusing on the mothership, but not able to get it just yet. So eating a fair bit of damage there, but getting one carrier is always nice. Psystorm has gone down for Scarlett. More Corruptors on the way. Broodlords are on the way for JimRising. That's definitely how you deal with it. You may say, Broodlords, but they can't shoot up. How are they going to deal with the carriers? They deal with the High Templar. They really force the Protoss's hand into engagements. They prevent the High Templar wandering forward, looking for good Psystorms now. Finally, some static defense going up for JimRising. I'm a big fan of that, but honestly, you may need more than just this one spine going up. Or 2 spines, pardon me. But look at that, some more Zealots being planned to run on in. Both players are pretty much maxed out at this point, so it really does come down to the army control. Now Scarlett's moving on in here. She's got a very scary army, there's no doubt about that. Lurkers are in position, and they're actually unsupported right now. They retreat. Very well done by JimRising, keeping those alive. The rest of his army is coming on in, but he did lose his 6th base. And here we see JimRising maybe looking to get on in here. He's got Broodlords, and they can engage the ground army, and if they can tie up all those High Templars, it's very nice. Hydras are eating some nice Psystorms, though. Scarlett getting those down, but I mean, the Corruptors are already starting to work away in this army. The Hydras are starting to push this back. The ground army, the army itself for Scarlett isn't too formidable. It's really all about this Psystorm, but the Psystorms are fantastic. The mothership goes down, but JimRising has lost a lot of units in Scarlett. She's up to 6 bases now. We're getting up her 6th base. Carriers are on the way, +3 Protoss air weapons on the way, so these carriers going to deal as much damage as possible. The 5th base is still up for JimRising, which is very important. He does want to think about getting up a 6th base if he's just going to trade on out. But speaking of trading on out, it seems since the latest patch that Zerg players have been having more success versus this late game army. And so with the new carriers, but here comes in JimRising, maybe looking to pick off one of these carriers, and he does actually get one. Very nicely done. Psystorm going down to shoo those Corruptors away. Some more Psystorms are going to have to go down to save these carriers, but Scarlett not sending down the storms. JimRising doing a good job trying to move those Corruptors out of the way, but a lot of Psystorms being burnt, and the carriers are just very vulnerable targets to these Corruptors. Scarlett's making Void Rays now because she knows there's an overwhelming amount of air for JimRising and that she needs to start countering that. Looks like we're seeing a bit of a Zealot run by head on in towards the 4th base this time. The 5th base, it's got static defense. Scarlett finds her way into the 4th base, though. The Zealot's now looking for the 5th base. A few Hydras are in position. There's going to need to be something else. These Zealots actually running into the 4th base. Now, Scarlett, she's rebuilding this army once again, but I did want to note the efficiency in this game is something that's very, very nice for JimRising. Previously, we would see, usually it would be the Zerg player who's being very inefficient versus the Protoss late game, but in this case, JimRising is actually playing more efficient than Scarlett. She has lost more resources, but speaking of that, might have jinxed him there. These Lurkers are going to get caught out, and those are pretty darn expensive, so they get picked right off. But here comes in the Corruptors picking off a Void Ray or 2, and the Corruptors are very mobile, so 3 Void Rays get picked off, they get out, they eat a Psystorm, but look at that, they turn around, they pick off yet another one. Carriers trying to get out their interceptors to deal with these Corruptors, but Scarlett's still having a rough time. JimRising doing a good job this game. I feel like I've been zoomed out this entire cast too, by the way, but Scarlett's still producing more Void Rays, queuing up more Zealots for run-bys. That's partially where a lot of her resources have been going. It's fine because she's got the economy, but JimRising is committing in here, and this may be a little bit ambitious. There's a fair few Broodlords on the ground, but the carrier force is pretty significant. However, Void Ray is wandering forward, getting caught. Now it looks like JimRising looking to commit on here, but Psystorm's pushing back those Corruptors. Corruptors are getting shots off right now. They're trying to focus them down, but the carriers are going to be able to push them back. JimRising does wear thin. Broodlord's not a chance of retreating. They are a committed unit. When they commit, they do not get on out. Meanwhile, a nice Zealot harassment going in for Scarlett. Looks like she picks off a lot of the drones. JimRising is really committing in here. Hydras have actually picked off most of the interceptors right now, so the Broodlords are staying alive thanks to their Hydra cover. We'll see what else JimRising has coming in here, but the answer is not much because his economy has taken such a beating from these constant Zealot counterattacks. That base goes down once again. Who knows how many times that hatchery has gone down, but looks like Scarlett pushes back JimRising, and that is fantastic for her. She's just been relentless with these Zealot counterattacks. There's been times in which you'd say, okay, enough Zealots being sent in is enough. They're actually pretty expensive, but no. Scarlett's been finding a lot of value with them picking off a ton of bases. And now suddenly JimRising, he's got these he's got these Broodlords, he's got a few Hydralisks, but his army is not that formidable. He's got up another base here, but he's not mining from it. His economy is much, much worse than that of Scarlett. Zealots are going to be getting cleaned up once again as Scarlett sent in even more, but she has done a real number to the economy of JimRising, and she's got up these 6 bases still. She's in no danger of really mining out. Yeah, the mains mine out. Yeah, the naturals mine out. The third is getting there, but here we're seeing, I mean, she's still got up all these extra bases. JimRising's economy has taken a lot of damage, and JimRising's moving out right now. Hydras are out, but there's also some Psystorm, and that's really what Scarlett needs. Gets them down on the small number of Hydras that JimRising has, and every unit matters. And Scarlett and JimRising having a bit of banter here. JimRising saying Zealots, Ultralisks for 100 minerals, and Scarlett saying that they have charge here. A bit of funny banter coming from 2 Zerg players right now, but Hydra's charging on in here, but it looks like JimRising doesn't have enough. Scarlett's gonna be able to take it. GG, JimRising taps on out some final Psystorms there to take out the army. And I know that game, I talked a lot about efficiency and everything, but Scarlett, I mean, that game, those Zealots really were the MVPs. It really cut or pulled the rug out from under JimRising as he was just constantly trying to get steady footing, but Scarlett just with the Zealot run-bys just prevented him from hitting that comfortable Zerg like late game, that economy. Because it is really interesting in Starcraft 2, if you guys are following it lately. It's up in the air whether late game Protoss is good. I mean, Protoss has always had a very good reputation for, you know, say, staying back, building up a very strong army. Earlier in Legacy of the Void, it was very prevalent, but Zerg players, they got a lot better. With the current Viper, with the current Infestor. And I mean, we even saw it partially at like BlizzCon and some other high-level tournaments throughout the year. We'd see Protoss players would lose out to Zerg players in the ultimate late game. And so it really creates an interesting dynamic of Protoss players still trying this, making it work, changing it up. But Scarlett, this win really was off the back of the Zealots. You can't say much about this. This base right here, the lack of a base is the main thing in this game. But yes, if you guys did enjoy the game, it was really awesome to cast another match like this. I always love casting these games. Sometimes I do tournaments in the morning that are very, very early, and so, you know, I'm not going full speed in those tournaments and some of those VODs, but no, it's really awesome to cast these replays because I can do them whenever I want. And if you guys do enjoy the content, feel free to leave a like on this video. If you do enjoy the content as well, feel free to subscribe, as I'm pretty close to 1,300 subscribers as I upload this. So I shall see you guys next time. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.